This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony, air quotes nippy, Ames.
And this is A Little Bit Culty, a podcast about what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real cult stories told directly by the people who lived through them.
Because we want you to learn a few things we've had to learn the hard way.
Like, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you're already prime recruitment material.
You might even already be in a cult.
Oops. You better keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Season 6 of A Little Bit Culty.
Hey, everyone. We have a special Mother's Day episode for you, featuring none other than the Bubbinator, a.k.a. Sarah's mother.
We aired this earlier this year on Patreon, but we wanted to unlock it for everyone far and wide because, as the title states,
Sarah's mom has got it going on. Wait a minute. That's the name of the episode?
It's like from the song.
Oh, it is? Is that what
Jess's mom has got it going on.
Yeah, you know what that song's about?
No.
Okay, maybe I want to read the lyrics before you go name it a podcast episode after it.
We're going to blame Jess Tardy for that one.
Well.
We also wanted to highlight the fact that we've now made Patreon more accessible to everyone. Now you can get access to episodes like this one early and ad-free every month for just $5.
That's a matcha latte, isn't it, Sarah?
I spend more on a matcha latte than $5.
You do, actually.
Probably more like $6 or $7.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. It's not just one bonus. In fact, we'll be dropping 4 episodes exclusively on Patreon every month. Plus, it's a good time over there. Right, Sarah?
You're really selling it.
It's so much fun over there.
It is a good time. It's more casual. Sometimes we have guests.
We let our hair down.
We have guests like the one you're about to hear. And also one with my brother is in the works coming up. Never before heard from brother of Sarah Edmondson.
We really tear through your family members on Patreon. There's your mom, your dad, your brother. You're just exploiting the Edmondson Shapiro family over there.
But most of the time it's just Nippy and I discussing the episodes. We discuss what's happening in the cultiverse. We read letters from our guests. We play
Sarah
voicemail.
Smokes a pipe. She just hangs out and really lets it all out.
I've never smoked a pipe. Just
Actually, I've seen you smoke a pipe. Well, define pipe.
I've never smoked a pipe.
Well, if it had marijuana in it, you would smoke a pipe.
This is not the place and the time. I know,
right.
as everyone knows,
Your mom's going to be listening to this.
My mom knows. My mom knows. But I do
smoke
gummies.
A pipe?
No, that I do gummies.
That's so racy.
I do gummies.
Okay, enough about
Patreon.
Patreon
Anymore. It hurts my lungs.
No, I can't either.
That's very 90s.
Plus, it's so passé. All right, enough about Patreon.
But yeah, anyway, normally it's just Nippy and I talking about those things. We also read good and bad reviews.
So you see the segue where it says, but enough about Patreon?
Oh yeah, but wait.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that for $5, in our opinion. As my Aunt Simone used to say, can't afford not to buy it.
You should have Aunt Simone on.
Maybe we could.
While we're at it.
We'll see.
We'll just have the whole family on. It's half of Canada, by the way.
And the Patreon support from our amazing listeners keeps this show coming to your podcast feed. So thanks everyone who's already joined us there.
Can I throw some Canadian facts at people while we're talking about Canada?
What about the circling back to enough about Patreon?
Okay, but enough about Patreon. Let's talk about Canada.
Okay.
50% of Canadians' population lives within 2 hours of Toronto. And Toronto is the 3rd or 4th biggest metropolis in North America. And 90% of the people in Canada live within 2 hours of the U.S. border. And I think it is the biggest landmass country in the world.
Nippy's
And
fact.
it only has 40 million people in it, which it recently passed. And that's as big as California. And California's GNP is bigger than Canada.
Wild.
Just become a state.
One of those people in Canada is my mother. So back to the main event.
Here's our chat with the nameless Sarah's mom.
We're protecting her anonymity. I mean, if you want to search on my Instagram, you probably figure out who she is in about 20 seconds.
Yeah, it won't be hard.
Here's our chat with my mom about Nexium, about loving someone through an occult entanglement, and the power of a mama's love. Enjoy.
All right, here we are, everyone. with another very special episode of A Little Bit Culty. We get to grill Sarah's mom, a.k.a. Bubby, a.k.a. the Bubbinator, a.k.a. the Bubbarama. Let's roll the dice, see what happens. Podcast history being made. Sarah, take over. And then I'm sharpening my knives over here, Ellen.
Probably one of the most anticipated interviews of all time. People have been asking to hear from you, Mom, because you and I have been on a journey. Am I right?
We really have.
We really have. And I feel like this is going to be really healing.
Pretty sure I was there.
Nippy was riding shotgun. Anyway, let me give a proper introduction. This is Ellen, a.k.a. my mama, and the Bubbarama. And she's been my ride or die since literally day one. So I'm not only excited that she's visiting us here, I'm going to cry. It has been a journey. Okay. She's been visiting us here in Atlanta, but I'm also thrilled to finally have her on the show to talk about cats and crocheting and things like that.
Crystals.
No. There was a time that I was in a cult for 12 years and then blew the whistle and became a cult podcaster. But before all that, Nippy.
People have been hounding us from all over the place to have this episode.
So here we are. Welcome. Welcome, Mom.
Good to be here.
How you feeling?
I'm really excited.
You look a little nervous.
Oh, yeah. Here it comes. Obviously, we already know the answers to some of these questions, but we want to ask them again so we can get you on the record, some of these things. Can you share with us your initial impressions of me? How awesome. No, I'm just kidding. Can you share with us your initial impressions?
I think we need a whole separate show for that.
We probably should. It would be short. Can we share with us your initial impressions when Sarah first became involved with NXIVM? And can you take us back to that? I was not there for that. It's before I came into your life and changed it.
For the better, of course. Like in 2005, when I first started taking classes, what was your first gut instinct?
My first gut instinct was not positive.
Well,
by the way,
we know that.
Mom, you do not have to be diplomatic with me anymore. For the record, for our audience, my mom was very gentle with her observations as to not push me away. I think she's still used to doing that. You can let your true, authentic self come out. I'm not going to.
Vanguard's in jail.
Vanguard's in jail. You're not going to be in trouble. What was your first thought when I came back talking about? Probably when I even told you I signed up before I even took it.
Yeah.
What did you think?
The first things that I felt very cautious about was that this was the program, that this was the thing you've just discovered, that these guys were onto something that nobody else was. Because teachers that I've had in my life are incredibly humble. And when I heard that he was promoting that he was the smartest man in the world and that he had the highest IQ of anyone in the world, I was really concerned. First of all, I didn't believe it. How would he even know that? But who does that and why? And not the leaders or teachers that I respect who are more in the background, and the focus is on the people that they're working with, not on themselves. So that was the biggest thing that I was concerned about.
And to clarify for our audience, you had been in the personal development, and would you call it transformation or self-awareness? Like, what do you call the work you'd done up until that time?
Humanistic psychology and personal and professional development in this area.
So what was it like when your 27-year-old daughter told you that all that was bogus and found a better solution? In fact, not only a better solution, but the only solution.
I think it's natural that your children are going to find different things or have a different view about things that you're doing or I'm doing as a parent. So it's more that this group seemed to presenting themselves as the only way. Because I remember they didn't seem to want to talk to other people about what they were doing, where there might be some commonality. It was all focused on getting people to sign up for this thing in which there was an incredible amount of pressure.
So what were the biggest red flags other than the ones you just said? Like, when did the bells really start to go off for you? Because I remember you took some trainings early on.
Yeah. Well, when I first walked into the room, with a giant picture of Keith, but I was very alarmed by the secret signals and hand shaking and bows. The fact that it was supposed to be mimicking martial arts, I did not buy that. I found it very concerning.
I took my first 5-day, and then you ended up taking the 5-day training. How did that happen, considering you were already in A, but B, no.
No, just kidding. She would never say that.
Yeah, I don't consider, I ever want to say that I'm enlightened. Well, at that point, you weren't promoting it. You were just taking courses. And something you really wanted to do with me. And I wanted to do that literally to be with you because you're my daughter. And I think, well, maybe give this a chance and see what it is. And literally to have that experience with you. And yeah, I was very curious too.
And were any of your fears alleviated with the curriculum?
You know what? When I did the curriculum, all along I had red flags. My approach is, okay, I know who I am. I'm not going to get swept up in this. I'm going to see what this has to offer and experience it. And yeah, no, my fears were not alleviated. There were some very bizarre things in there in the curriculum.
Like what?
I can't remember.
He was asleep.
But yeah, I recall you sleeping most of the time, Mom, which at the time only fortified my belief that you weren't open. You said you were open, but you weren't open, and probably because you were defended because you believed your way was the only way because you're a therapist, and therapists don't know what they're talking about. So that was my perspective at the time.
Or the curriculum was boring.
The curriculum was very strange. And it was like putting together things that you've heard of or studied or whatever in a different way. But some of it, I can't remember what they called what eventually became evident as sociopathy.
Being suppressive?
Yeah. Being suppressive. And it doesn't come as any surprise to me that this material was all scavenged from other people's legitimate work and approaches that they had. Yeah.
I remember my mom was the demo for the projection sourcing, which was basically a demonstration of how an EM works where you're mad at somebody else. Is this something you feel comfortable sharing, or would you prefer to keep that private?
I could try to share it. The people are very nice people there. And this woman I felt comfortable with her, and I wanted to see what it was. I wanted to get something out of this. But I feel that my head they were trying to turn my head around about an experience with somebody I was dating at the time who was doing them very slimy things, and somehow turned around that it was actually me who was doing that. And then I thought, what? This is really confusing. This doesn't feel right at all. And it really affected me, actually, because I didn't have that word at the time, but playing around with your head. And I think this guy did something really bizarre, and now I'm being told that I did it.
Because you had not spied on him, but you checked his internet web history and on your computer.
That was on my computer.
Ellen,
and and so you had caught him and gotten mad about it, and that's what you use as your projection sourcing. And then the sort of thesis was, well, because you'd been spying on him, you were the one actually that was being slimy. And that's just such a great example. No, terrible that it happened, and I'm so sorry that happened to you, but it's such a perfect example of what gaslighting looks like. Oh, actually, the problem's within you because you're the one that's going behind his back and checking up on him.
Yeah. And at the end of that first 5 days, I got a major pressure to sign up for the long program. I can't remember what it's called again. I've blocked that out.
The 11-day. Was that me who pressured you?
No, it was one of your team there.
I think it was Barbara Boucher.
Yeah. And it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And they also said you couldn't get out of it. And then right after that, I decided to look it up online.
Oh.
And every single thing that I had either brought up or experienced was there. And I thought, I don't feel good about this. And so I tried to get out of it. And that was very difficult. They made it seem like this is my only opportunity to resolve all my health issues. And it was not a pleasant kind of pressuring, and wasn't what they said would happen if you decided you didn't want to sign up for it. So I was concerned.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I show up halfway through Sarah's experience here through this thing. And Sarah, at this point...
I was a year in.
No, but I didn't really start going out to Vancouver to 2009, 2010. I don't think I met your mom till probably 2010, 2011.
No, you would have met her in 2009. Later.
Before we were dating, she was waving at the door and wouldn't come in and say hi to people because she was appropriately weirded out.
Mm-hmm.
What? What was I doing?
When you came into when it was down at that hotel, the level 2A?
Yeah.
That was 2009.
Okay.
And that was the first time I met her. But I met her, but then she picked us up at the airport. I think that was 2011. No, you and your mom had a big fight. Yeah, I think your mom won. I remember. At this point, Sarah's deep in. She's having success in the organization. She's having what it looks like external success by running a center and starting all those benchmarks are being hit. But I imagine at this point, you're having conversations with other family members, what their impression of what she's doing is, who were not in Nexium. So basically there's some chatter going on behind the scenes. How are you contending with that? And how were the other family members continuing with that while Sarah was what looked like living her best life? Because it's hard for you to reconcile. Sarah's doing well, happy, thriving. And then behind the scenes, you guys are having these conversations. Talk to us about that.
Actually, we weren't having those conversations. I wasn't talking to other family members. Yeah.
Not at the beginning.
Yeah, but I didn't want to betray you or cause any problems for you. So I really feel that I kept it to myself more. Maybe a couple close friends I told about it.
This podcast wouldn't happen without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Are you with us? Come find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. It's a lot of fun over there, people.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
I know your dad and my dad bonded over the fact that it was a cult.
Yeah.
Were you privy to those conversations?
No, I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, apparently. Well, I've since spoken to my dad, and he's like, yeah, I love Jack, because I guess my dad's like, you mean like it's a cult? And Jack's like, you got that vibe? Now, I knew that's what they were bonding over at the time at the wedding, but I wondered if you were...
Now I'd like to hear more. I want to hear more about that.
That's the extent of it. I think your dad and my dad are very throwback kind of guys.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what is this? Kind of like how I was at first and how a lot of people were at first. And we were all sensitive to the impression it had on people. I'm just wondering what conversations may have had behind the scenes, because I know some of your extended family were like, yep, it's a cult. And we're like happy to see us out. And we didn't know that till recently.
Mm-hmm. I was very careful because I was conscious of Sarah's relationships with family members, and I didn't want to be saying anything negative about her to them. So I wasn't sharing that with them, maybe on occasion, but why did you think that I was?
No, we didn't. We're asking you, like, when did you start to consult? I know that there was there was a point to maybe have an intervention.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, one of them who was living in town was becoming concerned, and the main person I had discussions with was with your dad. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure whether I want to talk about that here, because that's his story. Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless, I think what's fair to say is that different people weren't sure how to handle it. And it also seemed that they were confused, because even though they thought it was a cult or something was weird about it, I apparently seemed to be doing great.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you? I started to have external success in the outside world, is what we'd call it. Was that conflicting to your feelings that I was involved in something bad? Like, my life looked good on the outside.
I was worried about it because I thought you were being groomed, especially by Nancy, who I had a very negative impression of right from the start.
Tell me your favorite Nancy story.
I can't remember. Can you tell me what my favorite story?
Go off, Ellen. This is your opportunity.
My mom still thinks she's going to get sued. You could just say, in my opinion and in my experience first. You can say whatever you want.
But I just don't think that Nancy was genuinely interested in me. And let's have lunch. We're in a similar age group. And I really think that because I was so suspicious of it, that she was suspicious of me. And that's what I think. So very hard to form a real connection with her. But I think the worst thing was when you called her your second mummy.
I'd like to publicly apologize for that to you, Mom.
It was first, wasn't it?
Don't you dare. It was never, no, you were always number one. But she was a second mommy to a lot of people, and that's part of the gross dependency that she created, and it's nauseating to look back on.
Also, I do agree with you. And I do think she saw you as an obstacle in owning Sarah's time, production, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Because you were a voice in her ear.
Yeah. One of the things that I experienced at that time at V Week when I went to a meeting about the Rainbow Cultural Garden, and for once I just didn't hold back. And I asked all the questions that I was suspicious about that program. I had really big concerns. And the leader got very mad at me. And then I think, Sarah, you wanted to go tell Nancy about this. And that,
for the record, I don't remember wanting to tell on you, but it's also not outside the realm of possibility. So go ahead.
Well, I think you said you should talk to Nancy about this. I may not be remember it correctly, but from that point, her displeasure with me was extremely evident, and I was really uncomfortable. But one of the things, remember, I think the time you're talking about, Nippy, when I was at a hotel downtown that you were doing something, and yeah. I was really upset because on Mother's Day, there was instead going to be a giant festival of flowers for Nancy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
That.
What?
Are you sure?
I don't think that was what
in May. No, it wasn't taking place there, but I found out about it. It was going to be in New York. Yeah.
It was going to be in New York?
Yeah.
It was in May.
Yeah.
Huh. You remember that? That must have been really upsetting.
Yeah. It just meant that they were going to be conflicting times. But I also had some experiences like the whole thing, like the ranking system. I remember one day I did not feel comfortable at the center, particularly when Nancy was there, but going in there, and I had some pretty serious eye issues at the time. Coincidentally, didn't want to see certain things. But I remember it was your birthday and Mark's birthday, and Nancy was there, and I was placed in the back row, very back row.
Because you were a white sash.
Yeah. And I thought, what about the fact that I'm your mother and it's your birthday and I can't see anything? But it was the ranking system. Absolutely. I think, how do you rank people in this way? Like, who has the absolute nerve to do that? That was something that really, and the sashes was something at the beginning that I was very uncomfortable with.
I remember that. And I remember that you really didn't like the mission statement.
Oh, the mission statement. I considered it was like a prayer or something. And despite everything that they were saying about personal integrity and so on, people were asked to mouth this off, even if you didn't believe it. And then I tried to come later so I wouldn't have to say the mission.
That's where you and Nippy overlap.
No.
Nippy would avoid the mission statement at all costs.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, we'll have to talk more about that.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Fire away. That's what this is.
Well, it's so important for me that everything I say, that my words and actions and belief match. And to be asked to say something when I don't believe it, and specifically to say, and I don't have the wording right, because I think blocked the whole bloody mission statement, but that you're going to spread his word or whatever to make it be as successful as possible.
Do you remember the line that?
Pledge to
enroll as many people as possible within my success plan. Yeah. I pledge to ethically, what was it?
I forgot it.
I pledge to ethically enroll as many people as possible within my success plan. I will always support the ethical something.
People control the money, wealth, and value and resources of the world. I will always support the ethical control of these things.
I pledge to enroll people in ESP and its mission for myself and to help make the world a better place to live. Thank you, Vanguard.
You mean you weren't down with that, Ellen?
No, I mean,
it's so noble.
Yeah, I just could not say it. I mean, it's bad enough that I was sitting there. And don't get me wrong, I did admire how you threw yourself into it and became so successful within that. And I could see how it can happen. I was not being critical of you. I was just worried for you.
Yeah, that's a great segue to that.
I know the answer to this, but our listeners asked us to ask you, were you privy to the exit before it happened? How did you feel when I started to express doubts about NXIVM and ultimately decide to leave? Do you remember that moment?
Do you mean the moment when what happened? You phoned me from New York and said that, I can't remember how much you revealed right away, but first of all, I was absolutely shocked and devastated and traumatized by the content and why you were leaving at that time. I was incredibly worried that you'd been through what you had, as any parent would be. When your child is harmed, there's nothing worse. And I was beyond devastated and worried about you. And I was just so ready to welcome you back with open arms, and thank goodness. And I thought, this is like the best news I have, that you were leaving. And not only leaving, but suddenly it was the most amazing experience. It was as if It wasn't just an inkling that something was wrong. Suddenly you saw everything all at once. And and yet your mind seemed to be in such great shape because as these ideas and templates were melting, it seems like you were so intact in yourself. Your pure self was there. And your intellect and your ability to figure out what was okay and what was not okay was not there. It's like this false self got created that wasn't you. It was somebody else's ideas. It's terrifying, actually. What's it like for you when I say that?
No, I agree with you. I just remembering how you never said, I told you so, or you were just so relieved. Whereas there's been other incidents in the past where like you told me not to park downtown because of the hockey games. And then my car got burned in the riots. And you were like, I told you not to. And then I was like, Mom,
that's different.
Traditional sort of mother-daughter dynamics. Here you just really welcome me back, both of us back with open arms. Wouldn't you say, Nip?
Yeah, there was none of that. That's not in you.
Yeah.
It's not in your persona to treat people that way.
Thanks for recognizing that, Nippy.
Well, it's easy to recognize. And we'll get more to that on that in a bit. Do you remember the moment she told you about being branded?
I can't remember if you told me on the phone, but I remember when we dealt with it in Vancouver. When Sarah told me, and you were in Vancouver, at the same time you were also talking to Frank on the Frank Report, and we're incredibly wired. And I was reading it for the first time in the Frank Report, I believe. And it was huge. Again, the biggest thing for me is my worry for you that you had been through that. And just so happy that you were home and safe. And I was furious, absolutely furious at them. And the position you were put on a pedestal and you believed in it. And you thought you were doing a good thing. And then similar thing as I was talking about in that really minor incident of the EM, where
projection sourcing.
Yeah. You're being told that you're this incredible teacher and leader. And all at the same time, they're manipulating you and undermining you. And you're being used for other people's benefit. And I still get furious thinking about it. Yeah. That's my daughter. That's my daughter who was harmed.
I'm so sorry to put you through that, Mom.
I'm so sorry you went through that, my darling. But you came out so strong and true, your true self. And that's to have you were always there because we always stayed close.
Yeah.
But you were back from, it's like the underworld.
This is a question, Mom, from Camille R. Can you speak at all to the Nippy factor? When it comes to the Nexium exit in particular, I can imagine you were relieved that Sarah had chosen a partner would not only have her back in the moment, but was willing to burn it all down as a matter of justice. Was there any part of you that was worried that Nippy might act in a different way in that moment, given the choices to blow the whistle or stay in?
I wasn't thinking about it. I was so much in the moment. And I was very impressed, Nippy, that you confronted Lauren in the way that you did. Like it was bullshit and you saw it for bullshit. And you had Sarah's back and you were completely clear about it all of a sudden. It must have been awful for you not having this happen to her when you were right there. And you really had her back. And I think it gave her the strength to leave and go to Toronto. Was that at the same time? Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really need a merit badge for doing the right thing. So yeah, anytime you get into the physical realm and anything, I think it warrants retaliation. And Sarah actually asked me yesterday. What was it you asked me yesterday?
Are you still mad?
Am I still mad? I still think about 15 minutes with Keith Raniere and what I would do to him. And I don't talk about it that much. And she was like, I'm surprised that's still in you. And I'm like, you'd be surprised how much I think about it. I wake up sometimes and I wouldn't say fight or flight. Like that's a scratch I'll never be able to itch because I really want to beat the shit out of that guy. But he's getting his, and I hope that he's having a miserable life in jail. And that's the only way I can keep my own kind of sanity around it, because what I wanted to do and what I had to not do in order to go through the motions of justice was actually one of the more difficult things for me. But yeah, I think we made a lot of really good decisions in a short amount of time.
No, I was just remembering around V Week that last summer before it all came out. And it was actually awful for me being there. And I remember it was V Week that And when I heard that he was having like an 8-day, later to be like 12-day birthday party for himself, I just thought that is completely bizarre in itself. And I accidentally called him a megalomaniac.
To me. You said
Sarah,
that to me.
To Sarah, yeah. But I tried to refrain using that language because I knew it was just going to push her away. I'm just thinking that's when I picked up, I think my unconscious was picking up that something really weird was going on in that last few weeks. It was becoming really evident. And to me, there was something else going on there. I couldn't attend one of Keith's talks at night because I just thought it was such bullshit. It was just like, why are people lining up? This doesn't even make any sense. Is he doing it at midnight because that's when everyone's about to go to sleep? And then when Nancy did her little seminars, my eyes were closed almost the entire time because it didn't make any sense. These were these exercises that made no sense, but giving you the impression that they're these brilliant things and you probably just can't understand them because you don't have her wisdom.
And it's funny, at that point, we were skipping them.
Yeah. By the end, Nippy and I were like, oh, Troy needs a nap. And then we'd all go nap and like miss. Yeah. V-Week definitely changed over 12 years. But you attended how many? Do you remember?
I think 3.
Yeah. Including the last one. And I think that's when you said to me that you thought that he was sleeping with some of the women and I just couldn't take it in. Or do you remember how I responded when you said that?
Yeah, what did you say?
I don't remember. I just remember not thinking it was true. I just didn't think it was possible.
Or maybe that it was not your business. But I just picked up this incredible vibe from a few women who it turned out he was sleeping with. And
we don't have to say their names here because some of them have since woken up.
It's not about them so much as I thought there's some weird sexual thing going on here. And it was awful for me because at that point, it was really obvious to all in the leadership that I was very suspicious of things. And a lot of them were really not talking to me.
Do you think that's because you were a therapist?
Yes, it could be. Yeah.
And had you had any cult experience prior to NXIVM?
Well, I was briefly introduced to one when I was 18 as a personal development thing that turned out to be a cult. I was never called that, but as soon as I realized I'd gotten out of it, and I've seen, and living on the West Coast and having a practice for many years, you're going to run into people who've been in and out of these groups, and even friends of mine. So I was familiar with them and knew about them and was attuned to them, but I was never in one myself.
And did your perception of cults and coercive control change throughout our experience with NXIVM? I
think the thing that I've really learned a lot about is the question of consent. And that is a very complicated question because I would have people saying to me, she consented to all of this. And it certainly was not my experience working with people or talking with people over the years, that it's a very deep twisting of what consent means. And I really have a lot of respect. You've worked with that, Sarah, because I don't think it was true consent. And yeah, my experience changes all the time, especially seeing what you two have been through and all the programs you've encountered. But I remember being fascinated and appalled with the Manson murders and Jim Jones, and I was incredibly knowledgeable about all those.
For more background on what brought us here, check out my page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And if you want to see that story in streaming form, you can watch both seasons of The Vow on HBO.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Uber Direct helps you give your customers what they want when they want it. Offer them delivery options in under 2 hours, on the same day, or scheduled up to 30 days in advance. Plus, share real-time tracking and ETAs by text. you can keep growing your business at a price that works for you. Never pay commission or hidden charges. Just pay a fixed fee per delivery. Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to a little bit culty, shall we?
This is from our listener, Margaret Mary Downey. Given your therapeutic training background, how do you think we could train therapists better when it comes to understanding cults and cultic abuse?
I did have some training in it, and it was very valuable. I think there should be some training for therapists in this. And the part that was valuable for me was when the people that I was working with, or my teachers, brought in somebody who had been in a cult and worked with them and showed how to work with someone who had been through a cult and got them to express their experience. And they gave some really good guidelines about it. And I remember I'm just hearing, if everybody is meant to be thinking the same way, then it's a cult. But a lot of different behaviors and being introduced to the personal experience of just talking to people who've actually been through it and gone into one with all good intentions and then had a different perspective. A very hands-on personal experience.
Our listener, Lindsay, wants to know, can you share any advice or insights you've gained from this experience that might help other families dealing with loved ones involved in similar groups?
Well, I guess everybody is different and every family is different and every group is different. But for our particular family, like, we've always been so close. And I was determined that I was going to keep our connection and bond through all of it, that I would be there for you and support you as a human, and yet be true to myself. If I thought something was off, I would say it, but not in a way that was going to push you away. So I could live with that. And I was not that interested in, maybe I would do it differently. Hopefully I'll never have another opportunity like that. But whether I would have tried to gather other people to help you get out of it. But I was concerned about interfering with your support systems and relationships by saying negative things to you, about you, to others. So it was a pretty isolated experience isolating experience for me.
One thing I'd say that I think you did really well is that you really kept the lines of communication open, even though you were judgmental. And I could feel that. Like, when you said things like megalomaniac, I knew that you weren't like totally on board with it. You weren't like around NXIVM, but you weren't straight out, this is bad, this is a cult, and you didn't push me away. So when I did figure it out, you were there for me and I could go to you. Yeah. And I felt safe to go to you. I didn't feel like that bridge had been burned, which was really smart.
Yeah. And I really could see how you would get drawn into it. And I tried to find ways to go to those V weeks so I could be with you guys and with Troy at that time, and Ace wasn't born yet.
I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time when I was out and you were relieved that I was out, but then I was on a new mission, and that was the exposing NXIVM mission. And there was a time when we were deciding whether to be public in the New York Times, and you weren't so keen on that. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Yes.
How did you feel then? And do you still, I made the decision, obviously, but
I wasn't keen on that at the time.
And you were like, are you sure you want to do this? And I felt very clear. And you've always been good at keep in mind, this is going to be like out there, which I didn't really keep in mind. I just I needed to stop the train wreck. But what was that like for you when I was still very mission driven, but towards a different objective on the other side of it?
It was a similar experience, but I was afraid for you, for one thing. I didn't know what the repercussions would be. These people are dangerous as far as I'm concerned. I didn't know how you could be harmed, either through lawsuits or anything physical. And I was very protective of you both, exposing yourselves. And a lot of people were critical. I think that's changed over the time, but it was also in terms of our family, the timing was really difficult. Obviously, you had to go with what you had to do with it. I mean, I personally am so private, and it was interesting when you guys wanted to be, especially, well, say you, Sarah, wanted to be so public about this. And personally, the way I was traumatized, I could not even stand to see the picture of the brand. It was hard to see it on your book cover. It was incredibly hard to see it on the front page of the New York Times, and to know that everybody had seen this wound.
I agree with you. I wish I had a different cover, but I don't know if I ever told you that the publisher didn't give me a choice.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was looking for a different picture. Speaking of which, one of our listeners wants to know.
Did you read Sarah's memoir?
Yes, I definitely did. I think I was overseas somewhere, and I listened to it on the audiobook. It was amazing. I was so emotional.
You also helped write it.
Yeah.
And hold Ace while I was writing it.
That's right. That was fun.
Yeah, I was deeply involved in the writing.
And who's your favorite NXIVM member other than us, and why?
I have to have a favorite.
Is there anyone that you liked?
Allie.
Oh, yeah. Allie was like your friend. People who were your friends before, who I had relationships with, especially Allie. And Karen, I always found her easy to relate to and have had experience with her since.
And for those who don't know who Allie is, I was her bridesmaid. She was my bridesmaid. And she was at most of Troy's birth. She didn't stay for all 36 hours of it. But
she was there for the first 30 hours.
And she went home to take a nap and missed the big part of the show. But
I missed it?
No, Allie.
Oh, I
was explaining who Allie is.
You were there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Allie is also Paige in my book, and the first person I called when I realized another round of branding sessions were going to go on, and the first person I was really honest with about what was happening. And we're planning on having her on the podcast if and when she is ready one day. Who did you loathe the most?
I just don't feel like that's something
That's fine.
want to go into.
We'll leave it there.
But one of the things that was the hardest and most confusing for me was that these people seem to be lovely, interesting people. But when you start when I started talking to them, they had absolutely no interest in me or what I was doing, and only wanted to talk about the cult. So you couldn't actually have a conversation or anything meaningful with these people.
Partly, I think, because you're a therapist and we've been programmed to believe that your work had zero value. So don't take that too personally, Mom.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah. That took a while to unwind, right? For a lot of people, that therapy is bullshit.
But why do you think they really said that about therapy being bullshit?
It was a threat to their dogma.
Yeah, I think so. It's good that I could be able to see through what they were doing, which actually was true. I didn't see all of it that they were doing. That would be impossible.
Here's a question. What other things could you see me or us doing now that we're free and clear of NXIVM? Adam Grant, who is all about organizational psychology, I was just on his podcast, Mom, suggested I should get my PhD. Any ideas from your professional and personal point of view as a proud mom and therapist who specializes in professional development?
I don't think that's a bad idea. You're incredibly knowledgeable, both of you, about this now. And that would give you another level to explore.
Like the Stripe Path?
It's a bit like the Stripe Path. I think going and studying at a university is so different, although I don't want you to be put off learning if you did do that, to really make sure it's people that you can really learn from and that you're studying all different points of view, which you should in a really good graduate program. If you decided to do that, you should be studying many different modalities and not just one. And that's the problem with this one. One of the things I really hated was saying that you're getting a practical MBA.
That was the biggest load of shit.
Yeah.
Practical MBA through the Stripe Path that you'll never graduate from. So you'll never get your MBA.
Yeah, I think you could. Actually, you're a great business person. You could get an MBA.
You were always good at coming up with backup ideas. When I was an actress, my mom thought I should do birthday parties, children's birthday parties, and also do the photos because I was a photographer. So my mom was always very creative.
You really appreciated that at the time.
A Disney princess at birthday parties was I should do that now. I don't think I'm too old for that. Thank you. Thanks for that.
I didn't suggest going back. Just go. It's up to you.
Here's a last note from a listener, Anna. Not a question, but a thank you. Thanks for loving Sarah through her whole experience and being part of the reason she got out. The world needs her and needs more parents like you who meet cultic involvement with empathy instead of shame. Bravo to you. And I second that.
Oh, one more question from our listener, Vivian, who wants to know, how are you doing? She writes, I remember listening to the CBC podcast with Josh Block and how he explained that you weren't ready to have your name out there. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel that way? And how are you now with this whole debacle, AKA shit show, my words?
I think I'm still recovering myself. It's a huge thing for me to be there for Sarah and Nippy and their family and their boys. And it's an honor and something that I can't tell you that means the most to me, is to be with you on this part of your journey as well. I was there through the dark part, and I want to be there and how happy I am as much as I'm able to through the light part.
You're probably our greatest source of support, Mom, both emotionally, physically with the kids, and at times financially. So thank you for supporting us and loving us through it all. It's been a real blessing. I know a lot of people laughed with us that could not go back to their parents because there was too much shame.
Yeah.
And their parents say, just saying, I told you. And how could you have been so stupid or things like that.
And there's a very big difference between that you shouldn't leave your computer in your car and that you shouldn't join a cult. And I'm also just aware that it really was your journey. The only thing is that my journey then got caught up in that. So I'm still figuring out where my path is in all of this. It's just such a big focus to be there, be a parent and a guide in some ways and a support.
What do you think the biggest thing that's been helpful in your healing is?
I think it's really great that I can now talk about it to friends and family, support, friendship, my relationship with my family, especially all of you, just seeing how it evolved and from coming from a very different place. And when you go through a dark time with someone, that's a very profound experience in life. It's a terrifying, but it's also a privilege. And we've talked about light in the darkness, and you really are that, Sarah. And I had to really work on keeping my light shining through this because times when it was really scary.
I love you so much.
I love you too. I'm so proud of you, both of you, and what you've done from this experience, that you're helping so many other people, because we do make mistakes in life, go down the wrong path that we regret. And I've done that, and I've learned from that, and it's a very human thing.
Well, your empathy and support means the world to us both.
Love you very much.
Thanks for agreeing to do our podcast.
This might be the banger.
You have to explain what that is.
Yeah, when something's great and hip, it's a banger.
Oh.
Yeah.
Isn't it also a kind of British sausage?
It might be. I don't know. I don't understand that aspect of it, but it's fair to say Ellen gave us a banger.
It's not a word for her generation.
Well, it is now.
Bangers and mash.
People are asking, what have you learned about this? What have you gotten out of this? Ellen got a banger. No?
No.
It's not fair? All right.
I can't agree when I don't know what it is.
Listen, when we post this on Instagram, you're going to wear our swag and all that stuff. We're going to tag you and all that stuff.
Let's try this. Hey, Mom, are you going to look drippy drip in the bling?
I do know what bling is, but don't give me any sashes, please.
Do you know what drip is?
No.
There's a lot of words here that we just got to catch my mom up on. Oh, this has been so fun. It's very healing. It's just fantastic.
It's really healing. Give people context on that?
Yeah.
Ellen, I'm going to tease you a little bit in case you haven't noticed. Just for context, Ellen always has these random things when we're talking. She's like, it's just fantastic. It's just very special.
Remember when Troy was born?
It was a magical moment. And then
I think
we'll be talking about something.
A bit more sincere than that.
It's hard to tell. And she's like, wow, that was very healing. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're just having a conversation. But
well, when Troy was born was one of the highlights of my life.
My favorite part about, you remember when Troy was born? I'm like, do I remember? Like, if I was fucking there.
I'm sure you do remember. We went through it together, all of us, and it was amazing.
Yeah, Mom was there when Troy was born. That was also a banger. No pun intended. Anyway, all right, Mom. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. And do let us know what you thought. Hit us up on Instagram. Until then, call your moms, okay? Moms are precious. Moms are the best, and they take a lot of shit. They've taken a lot of shit, Mom, and I hope that you feel like this episode maybe mends some of those wounds if they're still open, because we love you and we appreciate you, and we'll just acknowledge publicly, since this will be aired to a lot of people, that my mom knew it first. My mom saw first. She knows the best. She's very wise, and we honor her. We love you. We value you. Nippy, come on, right? We acknowledge you.
Yeah, we see you. What's the thing?
I value you.
I got this from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
We see you. We acknowledge you. I love you, Mom.
Thank you. Love you too so much.
Bubs.
Like what you hear, do you? Give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Every little bit helps us get this cult awareness content out there. Smash that subscribe button. You know you want to. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you liked that episode with Sarah's mom.
It was a real banger, I thought.
A banger?
Yeah.
You can't reserve that.
For actual bangers?
Or just bangers
No,
and your
really
mom in the same sentence.
I just feel like it was a long time coming. Again.
It's very healing.
It was very healing. I think it was necessary.
Heal the rupture.
And Mom, I love you. And I'm so sorry that you went through all that. It must have been terribly difficult. But as fortified by all the cult experts we've since talked to, I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, you did well. Yeah, you hung in there. We appreciate that.
And so supportive from the beginning. So again, dear listeners, this has been a replay of a Patreon episode that we dropped earlier this year, and we're excited.
Enough about Patreon.
We've really shaken it up. We are excited because we've really shaken up how we do Patreon to give everyone early access for less money. Now you get access to all of our bonus episodes every month for just $5. That's $4 a month.
Call your moms.
Call your mom. Get your 4 episodes direct to you ad-free every month. Thank you for loving us through this podcast gig. We appreciate you all.
Call your moms.
We'll be back soon with more episodes. Happy Mother's Day, and call your mom.
Call your mom.
Call your mom if you're in Canada. Mom, I love you, Mom.
Bye, Mom.
Bye, Mom.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're heading over to patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty now to discuss this episode. In the meantime, dear listener, please remember, this podcast is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for real medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. For cult recovery resources and to learn more about seeking safely in this culty world, check out a-little-bit-culty.com/culty resources, and don't miss Sarah's TED Talk called How Cult Literate Are You? Great stuff.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound and our co-creator and show chaplain/bodyguard, Jess Tardy. And our theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then, drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.